All right. Thank y'all for joining us. We appreciate y'all taking your time out to join us. So, we're going to introduce ourselves. This is going to be very informal. So, feel free if you have questions in between to just pop in and ask. But super informal. This is live on Facebook and YouTube. So uh, we want to welcome our social media guest as well. So my name is Natalie Thomas. I am the founder of the Remix Center. The Remix Center is a mental health practice here in Dallas, Texas. We see individuals for individual and group counseling, but we also work with organizations and companies. Our specialties are stress, anxiety, and grief. And so we really just help individuals to decrease. Those for companies, we work with helping them to retain their staff, to um, help their employees to be more productive. But then, of course, we also do that with our individual clients as well. So, once again, I'm Natalie, and one of the things that we posted earlier was what is one thing that you're going to do to improve your mental health for the rest of the year. So the thing that I have chosen to do is I'm going to get more sleep. And so I'll turn it over to Tori, which is the other therapist here at the Remix Center.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tori Colclager, and I am an LPC associate. I work with Natalie in the practice with the groups, individual counseling, the consultations, and all of that. So something I'm doing for my mental health is actually something I started this summer, and I'm going to continue to do it throughout the year. But I have like this running list of just things I want to do, places I want to try, just for me, not including my kids or my husband. And each month I make sure I do one of those things. If I went to a cookie shop that I heard about, me by myself, no kids, and sat in a cookie shop and ate my cookie. But that's what I wanted to do. So each month I'm going through that list and I'm marking off things that I want to do just for me that I usually wouldn't take the time to do. And so it's been working. It's been making me happier, healthier. I've been a little nicer to be around with my family. So that's what I'm doing to continue to work on my mental health.
And then next, our social media manager, Javon, is going to introduce herself.
Hey everybody, my name is Javon. Like Natalie said, I do the social media for the page. And how I want to prioritize my mental health is the same. I just want to get like more sleep. I recently started a new job, so I'm kind of like still getting adjusted to working 8 to 5 every day. So by the time I get home, I'm like drained and just ready to go to bed. So I just want to get like more sleep, prioritize that.
So thank you. So that's who we are. And once again, we are the staff of the Remix Center. So let us know in the chat, what are y'all going to do? So this is World Mental Health Day. So this is the day that around each continent, everyone is focusing on mental health. So let us know in the chat, what is one thing you're going to do starting today? We'll give you a pass if you need to start tomorrow. But starting today or tomorrow, what is one thing you're going to do to improve your mental health? So let us know in the chat. And for those of you joining us online, you, of course, can let us know in the comments. What is one thing you're going to do for the rest of the year? So this is a great time to start this because we're in the final quarter of the year. And once again, just for World Mental Health Day, what changes are you making? But let's just start with one. So for the last 9 weeks, this is week 9 of what we call Therapy Thursday. And it's just a time that I come on and I let just we've taken A through Z. So it's the series is called Counseling A to Z. And so we're actually we just finished I last week, but we did this out of order. So when I got to G, we skipped it and went to H. Last week we did I, which was imposter syndrome. And so if you've missed the Therapy Thursdays, they're on Facebook and YouTube. So feel free to go back to either of those platforms. And it's just a brief time for us to just share what are things you can talk about with your therapist. So a lot of people wait until they're in crisis to go to therapy. But we know, of course, that there's so many things that you can discuss, but sometimes people just don't know. So with Counseling A to Z, we've just been walking through what you can talk about with your therapist. But G, grief, is what we're discussing today. But we skipped it because we wanted to wait until World Mental Health Day, since that's one of our specialties. So grief is a specialty for us. And once again, this is super informal for those of you joining us. So if you're on the Zoom and you have questions, once again, feel free. But we're just going to be sharing information that, once again, you can talk about with your therapist. So just as far as grief, a lot of people feel like grief is just a death, and they sometimes will only feel like that's all you can grieve, but there are so many more losses. So Tori and I actually both used to be English teachers. So I love words, and grief, the actual Greek meaning of grief means to make heavy. So that's, of course, when we lose something or someone, we do have that heavy feeling. And so today we're going to talk to you more about the types of loss, what you can do during loss, when you experience a loss. But it's not just a death. That's not the only thing that makes us heavy. I don't have a lot of slides for us, but I do have one for the types of loss. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tori, and she's going to talk to you all about the types of loss.
Okay, everyone. So as Natalie said, the type of loss that people tend to think about initially is a loss due to death, the death of a loved one. And I think it's important to note, here we're talking about losses and kind of difference between loss and grief. The grief is that emotional response, the crying, or if you isolate yourself, it's the emotional response to the loss. But if you work with a therapist, because you're grieving, this is what you actually work through. You actually work through your loss, what it is that you have lost. So the most common one we think about is the loss due to death. You also can have a loss due to divorce or the end of the relationship, because you're thinking about what you have lost beyond the relationship. This is a person maybe you have future plans with, or you have shared memories with. So you're not just grieving the loss of the person, but the loss of everything that was a part of that relationship. A loss due to relocation. If I stayed in Dallas, Texas all my life, and all of a sudden I moved to Idaho or something, that's a totally new world for me. I think about with the hurricane that's going on right now, a lot of those people are going to be relocated. And think about what they are losing. They've lost their homes. They're coming to different places. I know when I was a teacher during Hurricane Katrina, and we received a lot of students from New Orleans. And they're 12, 13 years old. They've lost a part of their culture. They've lost family members. They've lost everything that they knew. And so they really were grieving. The loss of a job. We all have bills to pay. We have a lot of things that come with our job. So if you lose a job, that's a big part of your life that is changing, a big part that's no longer there. And that's a loss you can grieve as well. Retirement. I know we all look forward to retirement. I'm looking forward to retirement. However, you think about how you've done this job 20, 30, 40 years. That job has become a huge part of who you are. And once that's gone, that's where you spent 8, 9 hours a day for the past 30 years, then what's there? You've lost something. So you're grieving actually the loss of the job. A lot of people do. The loss of health. Think about what a cancer diagnosis can do to somebody. If all of a sudden I'm paralyzed, other types of disabilities. I am actually grieving the loss of a healthy body. You know, that takes a real toll on people. That can have a severe emotional response. A lot of women grieve a miscarriage because they've lost, you know, their child. Even infertility, you're grieving the loss of not being able to have children. Empty nesters. A lot of women spend maybe 20, 30 years of their life raising children. A lot of families do. Those children are gone, and it's like, okay, how do I fill that void? There is a loss there. And all of these, you can actually have really, really extreme emotions because of those losses that you don't know how to work through. And that's the time where you work with a therapist, or you join a group, or you do something to deal with those losses. So don't think it's just because you haven't lost a family member that you're not grieving anything, that you're not grieving a loss. Sometimes you're grieving the loss of dreams. There's a psychoanalyst, Erik Erikson, and I'm not going to talk too much about therapy, but he talks about one of his stages, in the end stages, he talks about going through ego integrity versus despair. So you look back on your life when you get like in your 60s, and maybe you're satisfied with how your life was, or maybe you have a lot of regrets and you get anxiety because you don't have any, and you can't do it over. You can't go back. And so that's the loss of dreams, loss of what you wish, you know, you would have done. So those are kind of different type of losses we would like for you all to think about, and think about how those can affect you. Oh, and some of the common reactions to grief. So some of the common reactions to grief, grief can be challenging, right? Grief can be extremely challenging. It can be hard to deal with. Everybody is unpredictable. Everybody grieves differently. You know, I may grieve by crying every day. Natalie may grieve by going out and trying to have fun and not thinking about her problems. So one thing you cannot do is expect people to behave a certain way when they are grieving. People grieve according to their personalities. They grieve according to what the situation meant to them. But there are all different types of ways for a person to grieve. Grieving is very emotional. You go through sadness, you go through anger, you have anxiety. It's just this roller coaster all the time, where your emotions are just like a big, you know, ball of everything. And you all have probably heard about the stages of grief. I think it's important just to mention, not to get too deep into it, but those stages aren't necessarily in sequence. It's not, I do this, then I do this. Sometimes you go past the stage and you go back to it, because when you're grieving, you're always on this roller coaster. You can have physical reactions to grief: fatigue, headaches, changes in your appetite. Those are things you really, really experience when you are grieving. You also have behavioral changes. Sometimes you withdraw. You don't really want to be around anybody. You just want to be by yourself. You may change up your routine. A lot of things you love to do, you may not want to do anymore. You just really never know how grief is going to affect you, even from day to day. And a lot of times in grief, you feel guilty about things that were left unsaid or undone. Not even with just the death of a loved one, but even in a marriage. You know, a lot of times people go back and say, I should have done this, I should have said this. Maybe, you know, it would have saved my marriage or my relationship. So those are just some of the common reactions to grief, common reactions to loss that you experience. And sometimes those can be extremely difficult to work through. So now, turn it back over to Natalie. Any questions? Anybody have any questions? Anything in the chat? And as Natalie said, this is really just kind of informational. You know, we're trying not to get too deep. We are counselors, we're therapists, so we have a tendency to, you know, really want to work through stuff. So I had to try to stop myself. But anybody have any just general questions? Okay, back to you.
And if y'all think of any, throw them in the chat. We will, of course, answer those. And as Tori said, this is just a time we wanted to do the Therapy Thursday live, because we've been, you know, going online, and we've had a few comments in the chat, But once again, since this is World Mental Health Day, we wanted to pay special attention to grief. And once in our country, in America, it is not something that we really focus on. The Asian country, a lot of the Latin countries, they really have a lot of rituals around grief. They have a lot of discussions around grief. So grief in their countries are dealt with very differently because it's something that's always talked about. But we don't do that. So we just wanted to make sure we created this space tonight, since it's Therapy Thursday, to just have this chat. But once again, it's super informal. So if y'all have questions, you can throw them in the chat, raise your hand. And I see Chanel. I'll let you come on off mute.
Question. So if I am grieving, is there a certain time frame that I should start considering looking into getting a therapist? Say it's been a week and I'm just not getting past it. Is it 2 weeks? Is there any type of time frame that you can say just in general, or any signs that maybe I need to seek more help?
You want to answer? You want me to answer, Tori? I didn't even. I'll answer. So grief is complicated, right? So there is no time frame. Actually, even so, we use this book called the DSM-5 to diagnose people. And for grief, it's not even in there. Like, it's not considered a mental health concern because everyone experiences it. So anytime we have a loss, we're going to experience grief. So that does not, it's not a mental health disorder, right? But if there is a disorder called prolonged grief, which means that that individual has had a few years that they have been grieving, right? So until it gets to a few years, it's not considered a disorder, but it is something that we need support. So what I tell individuals is if it is impeding your life, right? So that's kind of what we look at. So if it's a normal grief process is normal, but if it is getting in the way of your daily living, then it's time to go to therapy because we only know what we know. Right. So as Tori was able to talk about the different theorists, right? The grief cycle, right? Because that's stuff that we've studied, but people aren't studying the grief cycle, right? Just a normal human is not studying, right? Erik Erikson. So those are things that we do that we can help our clients with. So I would say the time frame isn't necessarily as much of a concern as if it is stopping you from daily living. I'll say I met with an individual and she said, "Oh, I don't ever think I'm going to be happy." But the grief, she only lost the person 2 weeks ago. So at this moment, that's not a concern when she tells me 2 weeks in that she's never going to be happy. That's part of the normal grief process. Had it been 7 months, a year, right, then I'm concerned because it does start to impede on her mindset, her outlook. I'm sure at 7 months, if I think I'm never going to be happy, my attitude is probably bad, right? So with grief, I know Tori kind of talked about some of this already, but with grief, right, one of the things we see a lot as therapists is irritability. And no one wants to walk around being irritable for a year. But if it's irritability for the first month, that's normal, right? I don't really want to be around people after I've lost my job, lost my house, right? Been relocated due to Hurricane Katrina, lost my pet, right? I don't want to be bothered. And so so that's my answer. If it goes past normal functioning, or impedes on normal functioning, I think that's time to step in. Tori, anything you want to add? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. But the main thing, like Natalie said, is when it starts to impede your normal living, when it starts to impede your daily activities, when it starts to hold you back and you can't function, then that could, that could be a year in, that could be 6 months in, and you'll know when you're like, I need some help to move past this stage to be able to function. So it's more about how you're living and how you feel more so than a time frame. We also have a question in the chat from Benjamin. He asked, how can we support someone that may be grieving? Which is a really, really good question. And really the major way you can support, so if you want, Nelly, do you want to answer? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is to just listen.
And once again, y'all, this is real informal. So ask your questions and you'll get an answer by one of us, right?
So just listen to the person, let them talk. A lot of times people think that they don't want to talk about their loved one or they don't want to ask questions about them, but they do. You'd be surprised if it's lost due to a death. You'll be surprised how often they do want to talk about it. It's actually kind of therapeutic for them. And just respect that grief. There's no right or wrong way they should be grieving. That's the key thing to remember. However they choose to grieve is their process. So you just respect and support however they choose to grieve. Don't do the I know how you feel, sometimes, and try to start offering advice. I mean, we do that to be helpful because sometimes we have been through similar things, but no two people really grieve alike. My sister and I, we lost our mom. We both lost the same mother. Our processes were totally different for grieving. So just kind of stay away from the offering advice or I know how you feel. And again, just listen. That's about Natalie. Can you think of anything else?
Yeah, I want to actually, I want to
know.
actually piggyback off Tori of what you don't do, right? So telling them, I know how you feel. Everyone is different, right? So that's one you don't do. Don't tell them to be strong, right? This isn't the time to, what we want to do in those times is encourage them, so let them know, hey, I'm here to support, but they don't have to be strong, right? They've experienced the loss and it's okay for them to cry, to struggle to get out of bed. Like that is their emotional response. So telling them, hey, you'll be strong. One thing that we always say, right, is, oh, they're in a better place. But at that moment, they can't hear that. So even if, I've been a caretaker for someone who's been, really struggling with something for 5 years, right? At that moment, they're in a better place means nothing to them. That may be a conversation you may want to have, down the line if you choose to, but in that moment, they are grieving, they are struggling. So also, especially we do this a lot with older population, they're 95 and you'd say, oh, live the good life. Right. But that's also 95 years that I had this person. Right. Of course, I'm not 95, but that's so many years that I've had this person. So from the time I was born till that day, right, I've had that person in my life. So to hear, oh, they lived a good life isn't helpful. Okay. And what else? Oh, everything happens for a reason. Right. So if my significant other got killed in a car accident, like I don't want to hear that. Right. And so what happens when we do things like that is the person feels dismissed. And although we're trying to offer help, we're trying to offer support, we're trying to offer words of encouragement, they feel dismissed because in that moment it doesn't land well. It never lands well. And so I think, like Tori said, what we do is allow them to feel what they feel, but let them know we're there. We're there to support. Sometimes it is getting them out of their space. So, for instance, if hey, my friend needs to walk, they haven't been out the house in a week, I'm going to go and, make them go for a walk. Now they may not want to, like, but kind of let them know in advance, hey, what about on Thursday if we go for a walk? I know you've been in the house for a week. So exercise does help. It helps because it allows us to secrete endorphins, which is the happy hormone. So exercise and movement is very helpful. So if someone is just home, isolated for a week or two, like getting them out is helpful, but like let them know in advance. Don't show up on the doorstep like, hey, I'm here, let's go, right? Like let them know, prep them for it, you know. But getting someone out, or if you know that they're not cooking, taking, you know, we take food in the beginning and then we never go back. Right. So maybe 3 months down the line, you need to prepare a meal and take a meal. Grief is a process. So it doesn't end after the service or the memorial. But most times the calls do. The calls stop, the people stop, right? I actually am very cognizant of that. I checked on a friend just Sunday who lost her mom over the summer. And for me, I thought it was just a quick check-in. We were on the phone 45 minutes. And she was like, this is what I'm experiencing, and this is how I'm feeling. So the feelings continue, life continues. So still calling to check on that person. Okay.
And everything we're saying actually applies to all types of loss. You know, if your friend just got divorced, girl, you better off without him. Don't do that. I mean, it could even be true, but in that space at that moment, somebody who's grieving maybe a 25-year marriage, that's not really what they want to hear. Or somebody who has to relocate, well, you'll build bigger and better. You're trying to be encouraging, but at the same time, you have to give me the time and space to grieve the loss of this home or this job or this relationship. You know, and then I can move into that space where I know it's going to get better. I know I'm going to build better, but we're trying to help. We're trying to be encouraging, but you have to just find a good balance of being supportive and being showing empathy in that space until the person's kind of ready to turn the corner, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then one thing I also want to say, and hopefully this will help. So some things that we can do when we're grieving is to embrace the feelings, because we have so many emotions. So for us, we need to embrace the feelings. But if I'm supporting someone, I can listen to their feelings. I can encourage them to feel the feelings, because we all have that strong friend that didn't cry and it's months later and they haven't talked about anything. So we are telling you they need to feel, they need to talk. So as a support, you can be there for that, right? Also, getting support from others is something we should do during a loss. That's not the time to be strong. That's not the time to be like, I got this and I can do it all alone. Like, we need to get support from other people. That could be cleaning your house. That could be running an errand for you. That could be asking them to bring a meal. So that's not the time to have a lot of pride. That is the time to reach out, right, and ask for help. If whatever I've lost, because it's not always a death, right? So that's some of the things that we've kind of been discussing now, but it's not always a death. If I've lost my job, right, sometimes I may have to say, okay, who can I meet with? Who can I talk to, right? Just asking for help and support. And as a, someone who's supporting someone who's lost something, to say, hey, you're relocating, let me come help you pack. Right. So just being support for that person. Let me help you pack. Let me help you schedule some things if they're overwhelmed. So also, if you're experiencing a loss, create a plan. A lot of times we get stuck in our grief because we don't plan to get out of it. Right. So just creating a plan. So if I'm having to relocate, yes, I'm going to hate it. It's absolutely going to be, I hate packing. So that would be my worst thing. But I need to create a plan for it. So maybe I'm gonna pack this room on Monday and then another room on Tuesday. And as someone supporting them, say, hey, do you have a plan? What you gonna do? How can I help? Okay. Also, really, really, any loss taking care of your body, right? So we are mind, body, soul. So what we eat, how much sleep we're getting, are we drinking water? Because during the time of grief, you're not going to want to do that. So say you know someone who's gotten a divorce, just call them. Are you drinking water? Are you eating every day? How many meals are you eating? How much sleep did you get? So just checking on their well-being and making sure that their body is okay. Their mind, right, is racing. Their mind is struggling with this grief. Their mind is going through the grief process. But what is their body doing? We can always call and say, "Hey, did you drink water?" Text them, right? How many how many times did you eat dinner this week? How many times, right, did you eat lunch? And so those are things we can do and ways we can support. So I know that's a long answer, so hopefully that was helpful. But thank you for that question.
In the chat. I think we may have
Okay.
some of the other questions.
Okay.
But Demetria thanked us for addressing the various ways people grieve. And she asked, when people are grieving the loss of dreams due to chronic health issues like cancer that have interrupted a person's life, what different approaches would you take to assist someone experiencing that kind of grief? Bit of a loaded question.
Yeah. So that creating a plan is the first thing I would do, right? So if one of the losses, right, that we see all the time is graduation, high school graduation. So we know, like, oh, this kid, everybody's so excited. There's the cap and gown, there's the pomp and circumstance, there's all of that. But that kid is experiencing the loss because they've been in school for 12 years. For 12 years, they've known that they needed to be somewhere at a certain time. They were going to go to 3, 5, 10 periods, get grades. Like now that's over, right? So we always tell them, what's your plan? And I think when there is that loss and it is due to a chronic illness, because really there's two losses there, right? So there's the loss of my health, but there's also the loss of my dreams, because whatever I was doing at that moment is going to be interrupted. So to me, I would start, and once again, every therapist is different, which is why you get to talk to your therapist about these things, because Tori may have a totally different answer when she talks. But for me, I would start with that plan. They're already going to be focused on their health. I don't really have to talk about the health, right? We can, and that is something we will talk about. But for me, once again, with grief, it's what is interrupting their life. For that individual, it's more than likely their thoughts of what am I doing next? So let's plan for it. So I would have them create a plan and we would kind of walk through it to see what that looks like.
I think I would want to make sure to help the person understand too, just because you have a loss of dreams doesn't mean you can't create new dreams or you can't create new goals. You just have to take a different path now. Sometimes when we go through something like that, we get stuck where we are, but we don't realize there are hundreds of different paths we can take. This may have been a path that I never even thought about because I didn't have to think about it until I was diagnosed with this cancer. So I think at once you're kind of dealing with that loss, but at the same time, you're realizing I still have options. I can come up with new dreams. I can do research. I can have a new plan, and still have a satisfying life. I think we have to help the client move past the thought of my life is over kind of thing. I think that's kind of the initial response, and understand it may be a different life. It may not be the life you've been dreaming of since you were a 5-year-old boy or girl, but you can still live. We just have to adjust to the new aspect of your life, the new thing that's there.
Yes. And of course, those are action things, right? So we are very solution focused. So we want something to happen. So we can check on progress, right? But one thing we also would do is to talk about the emotions that are attached to that, the emotions attached to the feeling, right? That comes with all the things, the diagnosis, hearing it, the loss of this old dream, and even having to create a new one. Because there's some emotions that are going to come with me having to create a new dream, right? So those are things we would process. But as far as because once again, we are action-based, that plan and even changing that mindset, right? So it's going to be devastating, but just having that mindset that we're like, wait, I'm not gonna let it win, no. Right. So yes, it affects me. Yes, I feel some kind of way, but I'm not gonna let this beat me.
Okay. Samari, I hope I pronounced that right, as can grief turn into other mental illnesses such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, etc.? And as Natalie mentioned earlier, grief is not necessarily considered a mental illness. It's not in the DSM, but it can definitely lead to a person becoming depressed. It definitely can lead to anxiety. It definitely can lead to PTSD, you know, especially depending if I was with this person when they died or, you know, with this person when this happened. It can definitely lead to all of those things. And that's something else you would talk through in therapy also. We focus on depression, we focus on anxiety. So we automatically kind of have a plan for those, but most definitely the grief can lead to those other mental health issues. Now, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. And I think it's because um there may have been things that I was sad about already, but then now that I'm experiencing this heaviness of grief, now between me already being sad about some other things that I need to talk to my therapist about, now I have this grief. So now I'm experiencing several, right, things that are going on that make me feel sad. So now I'm depressed, right? So it's just an extension of things that probably were already going on that weren't addressed.
Okay. And Chanel said, God won't put more on you than you can bear is another one. People do say that. That's, yeah, kind of, and I know as a spiritual person, I'm a spiritual person, that's kind of where we go to our faith. But, you know, at that particular time, that may not be where that person is. Remember, you are there for them and you're having to meet them where they are. But that's one you hear a lot. Ben has another one. Talk about retirement and finding new purpose, please. Difficult.
You want to start with that one, or you want me to start? I'll start. So of course, as Tori said, I think we're all looking forward to it, right? I know I've been counting down for the last couple of months, even though I love my job, but like not this job, right? I have another one. But yeah, like retirement, once again, it is getting that plan together because it's just like graduation. So as Tori said, I've done this for 30 years. I know where to go, right? But then what happens, we get real excited about sleeping in, but you can only do that for so long, right? So after 2 or 3 weeks of sleeping in, then I'm bored. And so our jobs do fill a space and it fills some time. And if we really enjoy our jobs, it also gives us a lot of purpose. So in retirement, I now need to figure out, right, what am I doing with this time? What am I doing to still allow me to feel a sense of purpose, and just making a plan for what that looks like? So if I've loved my job, it's not that I did not have a purpose, that my purpose only resided in my job. I now look and say, okay, well, where's my purpose now? What am I doing now? And you have much more time to get it done, right? So you don't have to go and clock in. It's usually what you've been doing in the evenings that, is your purpose, but maybe not. Maybe now you get to express your purpose in 2 or 3 different ways. So how are you going to fill your time? What does your purpose look like outside of that job? And that's really how you plan for it. And it is a time to dream big, right? So most times we got in our jobs and we weren't exposed sometimes to a lot of things, right? A lot of like these young people have a lot of exposure to a lot of things, and they, like, when I hear them talk about the jobs that they want, I'm like, I don't even know what that is sometimes, because they have so much exposure. But now, as adults heading to retirement, we now have more exposure. We've traveled, we've talked to different people, we've seen documentaries. So sometimes we're learning from TV, right? So now we have more exposure, so we get to now dream bigger. So retirement to me is a time to dream bigger.
That's good. And piggyback off of what Natalie said, it is a time to dream bigger. And that's one of those where it really depends a lot on the client too. Well, everything, it depends on the client and their purpose and their goals. But also with retirement, maybe your purpose is you want a second career. My purpose, I think, is going to be to travel as much as I want to, and do things I want. So it really too depends on the individual and kind of the passions you had that you may not have even known it was a passion because you never really had time to do it completely. So kind of exploring some of those, like Natalie said, some of what you do in the evening or your passions, what you do with your weekends, and kind of exploring those further and figuring out what's the right fit for you in retirement.
So I figured out this chat. We got 2 more questions in here. So we'll take these 2 and then we'll get ready to wrap up. But does grief look different between adults and children? And share any helpful tips.
I would say yes, it does. Depending on the age of the child. Sometimes younger children, they don't fully understand. A lot of times children don't, especially with death, they don't fully understand the permanence of it. They don't understand how permanent it is. So they may just kind of be going on thinking grandma's, oh, okay. And then one day it hits them one day. Whereas as adults, we understand from the beginning, this is what it is. So we kind of start that process there. So a lot of times people say, well, children are resilient. They are, but it's not that they're resilient, it's that they don't grasp the full concept of what a loss is. And when it hits them, they don't know how to express it. That's when you may see children acting out in school, withdrawing, just all kinds of stuff because they don't know how to express that grief. They don't even know that they're grieving because they don't understand what's going on. As adults, even though we're grieving, even though we have a loss, we understand what's going on. But for children, it just takes on something different because they don't fully understand what that means, what a loss is. Because by our age, we've experienced loss, so we kind of get it. Maybe the first time they've ever lost anything. And so they have that emotion, they have no clue of what to do with it. So I would say the grief definitely looks different between adults and children. Anything you'd add to that?
I was gonna say, I don't even have anything to add. That was perfect. And then the final question, how do you support someone that finds comfort dwelling in pain, specifically due to a loss of a short-term relationship? That's a good one.
That is a good one.
And that was a tough one too, right? Go ahead.
Well, I guess I would ask that why do you say they find comfort dwelling in the pain? Is it because they won't move forward? And so you figure they must want to be in that spot. Like what actions are you seeing? That would be my question, I guess. That makes you say they find comfort in dwelling in that pain. Not saying that's not what's happening, but I'm just curious, more information.
Can I come off you and ask?
Yes.
Okay. No, just never happy, like never finds a happy moment and likes to continuously revisit the pain, from, short-term relationships or relationships that they just have not, put any stock in, but likes to continuously revisit the pain from the relationship.
So not even one relationship, like multiple,
but likes to revisit the pain from it. Just only the pain part.
I think we're dealing with something different there, Natalie.
Okay, we'll see what Tori's gonna say. 'Cause
We're dealing with something a little, it's about more than just these relationships. It's
Mhm.
about something somewhere that, and this is just as a therapist, I don't know who this person is. It's about something somewhere that they haven't dealt with or they haven't talked about or something that happened in the past. So I think that pain, first of all, is probably a familiar feeling for them, right? When you go through something so long, like you get used to being miserable. You get used to that pain. And I guess, like you said, it becomes comfortable. But I feel like that there's something with that person that they have not dealt with that they will have to really work through with a therapist that doesn't have just a lot to do with these short-term relationships. That's just what you're seeing on the surface. But Natalie, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think the toughest part of this is, right, we build our uh, for our emotions, right? We house our emotions in a certain place. And for me, I have mine like in optimism. And so no matter what I'm struggling with, no matter what I'm going through, my goal is at some point to be optimistic about it. Not that I don't experience the pain and the hurt and the rejection and all the things, right? But at some point, I want to do better. I want to feel better. But not everyone, right, houses their emotions there. Some take it the opposite way, right? So when you are talking about supporting those individuals, I think, as Tori said, it is encouraging them to go to a therapist because you may not be equipped to support them, right? So, because then they say, well, you don't ever listen to me. Well, you're not my true friend because you always tell me to let it go, right? So we start to, they start to tell us things that they don't want to hear because now they feel that they're being dismissed. And you can't say, right, you do this all the time because that's what you want to say. This is what you did for the last 3 relationships. When we gonna keep it moving? That's what you want to say. But as a friend, we wouldn't go that route. So sometimes you have to turn it over. And so I would say that is an individual because it is about mindset and something totally different from a relationship breakup and the feelings associated with it. There is a reason, right, that they've housed their emotions there, and that needs to be processed, that needs to be worked through, that needs to be worked out. And so there's not a whole lot of support that you can give because you can't process it with them, you can't work through it with them, you can't push them out of that place, you can't help them dig out of that tunnel. Right. So
Just, saying, yes, I know, girl, keep, you're not doing them a favor, letting them continue with that behavior either.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. So once again, this is World Mental Health Day. We want to thank you all for joining us. Since today was a Thursday and we always do Therapy Thursday, we said, hey, let's do it live since grief is one of our specialties. Let's skip. So we've done A through I for Therapy Thursday. So when you tune in, so if you haven't been tuning in, once again, we do it on Facebook and YouTube. And so you can always catch the live streams if you want to go back and see what A through I were. And then, of course, we'll be moving forward all the way to Z. But the series is Counseling A to Z and what you can discuss with your therapist. So we wanted to do, for in honor and recognition of World Mental Health Day, just this conversation where we actually come on and chat with y'all about number one, the question we asked at the very beginning for those of you that joined us late was, what are you going to do today? And we'll, like I said earlier, we'll give y'all a pass and let you start tomorrow. But what are you going to do today or tomorrow to what are you going to do to prioritize your mental health? I couldn't get it out. So once again, I said I was gonna sleep. Javon said she was gonna sleep. Tori said because sleep is important, right, for our mental health, especially as we're aging. Tori said she has actually started hers, but she's gonna just be really diligent about continuing to steal some time away for herself as a mom and a wife to say, hey, I'm gonna go get a cookie, right, by myself. And so, what are you going to do to improve your mental health? So that's number one. But once again, we definitely, would love for you to on Facebook and YouTube join us for Therapy Thursdays. Regarding grief, I want to share something with y'all. We do have a group that we're going to start. So Tori, if you want to tell them a little bit more about the grief group.
Yes, so we're starting, it's a grief group. We have it titled a holiday grief group because a lot of times this is when people start to feel kind of down. If you've gotten divorced this year, this is the time of year, where you're usually with family and you no longer have that. So the holidays can be a really, really tough time for people. So that's why we thought this would be a good time to start the grief group. It runs for 6 weeks. It's going to be awesome. I can tell you that already. A lot what you heard here was just the beginning, and you see me and Natalie getting kind of like we ready, so it goes much deeper. But they're scheduled to start November 11th. They will run from 6:30 to 8 p.m. After when you scan the QR code, there's kind of like a question and answer, ask you about the days of the week and stuff like that. And we'll reach out to you to join, but it's going to be truly awesome. I think the link is on here too, right, Nellie?
Yes.
Okay.
It's bit.ly /TRC group counseling.
And if you see the flyer, some of the benefits or understand the stages of grief, which I touched on those briefly, but we'll really kind of get into those. And it'll make a lot of what we discussed. It'll make a lot more sense after you actually get in the group and actually we talk about those stages and finding meaning after loss. Our goal is just for people to be able to live happy, healthy lives. We do this. This is our passion, and we plan to put a lot of passion in this group. So yeah, join us, sign up. We'll be ready November 11th. Did I forget anything, Natalie?
Just it's the week of November 11th. So as Tori said, when you fill out the questionnaire, we're going to look at the day of the week that works best for people. So you'll be able to let us know like your first choice, your second choice, because we want to make sure we are offering it on a day y'all are available. But that's the week of. So yes, you're right. The week of
closing October 31st, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So make sure you register by October 31st because that then gives us enough time to kind of, if we have to split the groups up, we can do that. It gives us enough time to choose the dates, get the information to you. So please register by October 31st if you're interested in the grief group, holiday grief group.
And our website is www.theremixcenter.com. The flyer is there as well. So it is posted on the site. And we do have a mailing list. And so this is one, we only do it once a month. So I know I've joined mailing lists and I'm like, are they sending me something every day? Like, what? It's automated systems. I know they're not pushing that send button every day, but it's super annoying, right? So we don't do that, but we do want our community to be aware of what we're doing. So this is the QR code for the mailing list. And so if we would definitely love for you all to join our mailing list.
And we do have a question in the chat now. Is the grief group open to people outside of Texas?
Yes. Oh, good point. Okay. So as far as our therapy services, we are limited to Texas because that is where we're licensed. And so with therapy, there's different types of groups. Therapy is therapy, and we can only provide therapy in Texas. But there are ways you can hold your group that it doesn't have to be bound to the state of Texas. So it is open to anyone. Yes. So we're still Central Standard Time. So it'll still be 6:30 to 8:30 Central Standard Time. So if they're on another time zone, they just have to, adjust for their time zone. But absolutely, it is open. And good question. Thank you for that, because we totally didn't share that. And so once again, grief is a journey. Grief is a personal journey. Let's make sure that if we're on that journey, that we get the support that we need, but let's also support others, and not just in the beginning. So sometimes I know, especially with divorce, people may not even mention to us for a year, right, that they're divorced, and they may not want anyone to know. But sometimes it's not that they don't want people to know, but they're still really struggling through that time. And so let's stay with them, right? So as they struggle, just know until someone's grief is resolved, we can be a support for that person. But I love Mimi's question, right? If they are, sometimes their grief is too much for us. And sometimes we are not equipped to support their grief. And we need to really encourage them to go to counseling, because it's something totally different, right, that's going on. So once again, our website is www.theremixcenter.com. You can visit. There are actual grief resources on there. So journals, books that we love, that we use all the time, that we recommend to our clients and buy for our friends. So, sorry, y'all. So there are resources on the website. So if you are like, hey, I need a journal, or what kind of book is helpful, you can visit the website. The resources are there. The flyer is there for the grief group. And yeah, so we want to thank y'all once again. Happy World Mental Health Day. And if you're joining us,
take those early morning walks and spend time with God. These were some of the self-care.
Oh, yes.
We had in the chat. So like Demetra said, she takes her early morning walks and spends time with God. Samaria, same thing, spending time with God and running every day to clear her head and space. So thank you all for that. Thank you for taking care of yourselves. Thank you for knowing that's important.
Yes. And once again, join us for the Therapy Thursday. Next Thursday, we're going to keep going, counseling A to Z of what you can talk about with your therapist. And if you're joining us already tonight from Facebook and YouTube, like, comment, share if y'all felt this was helpful. And so thank y'all for joining us in the Zoom and Facebook and YouTube. We're here to just give information, because we definitely, as Tori said, our goal is to make sure, right? Life is tough, but we want to make sure people are happy and healthy in that life. So thank y'all and have a good evening.
Bye, everybody.